Chicago gangs is taking on a migrant crisis. But before that, let me give you a little bit of a summary of what's happening over there. Make sure you hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications.
There is widespread evidence the vast majority of migrants coming to the United States do.
What? These places need to fix the audio. I'll come back to this one. Let me do a whole nother one. Let's go into this one.
A violent Venezuelan gang called Tren de Aragua, or TDA, has set up shop in New York City, using migrant shelters as a base for their operations. The New York Police Department says that the gang is responsible for thefts at high-end stores and ride-by robberies and scooters. They're also selling something called 2C, or pink cocaine, which is a drug that's becoming more and more prevalent. TDA has also been linked to the shooting of 2 NYPD police officers. And New York isn't the only city dealing with TDA. From Chicago to Denver to New York City, there have been dozens of arrests that have been linked to the group. A Department of Homeland Security official told the New York Times that federal officials were, quote, working on more than 100 investigations linked to the gang at one point this year. And, quote, officers nationwide have made more than 50 arrests related to the gang. In Aurora, Colorado, there's still ongoing debate as to whether the gang was responsible for taking over an apartment building in a now viral video. Gangbangers can be seen roaming the halls with guns and seemingly breaking into apartments. This video, by the way, went so viral that even Donald Trump took notice of it. Here's what he said at the debate.
What's happening? You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio, Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country.
Okay, so we're joined right now by somebody who used to be in a gang in Chicago, who went to prison for 20 years for murder, and he thinks that TDA is such a problem in the city that he fears an all-out turf war is about to break out between the TDA and local Southside gangs. Tyrone Muhammad is with us. He's now part of a group called Ex-Cons for Community and Social Change, Ex-Cons for Trump. Thank you so much for joining us. So why do you believe that a turf war might be imminent?
What you have to understand, thanks for having me, Jesse. What you have to understand is that Chicago gang culture is not like what it used to be, where during the Clinton 1994 crime bill, you removed men who actually controlled the streets, that was rather respectful to his neighbors as well, if that's not oxymoronic, right? Rather respectful, and also had a link to the communities that they lived or was involved with. Now you have a situation where we have now cliques, crews, and sets that don't follow certain guidelines and structures that were set by founding gang leaders and founding gang literature, right? So what happens is now you
Hold on. Let me stop that real quick. I want to grasp all of the standards that we've set as a result of gangs. Now, I know that we're talking about the migrant crisis. However, I want to address what he's saying about this whole gang culture thing that we celebrate so much. All right. So what he's saying is the gangsters of yesteryear had higher standards than the gangs of today. Let me say that again for the people in the back. What he's saying is that, hey, listen, man, we did our dirt. We ran in the streets. We took care of business, but we didn't hurt no women and children, or you couldn't sell to your neighbors, or we would at least give back to the community, or we did this, we did turkey drives. Now, let's consider that. Okay, let's take that in for a minute. All right, let's consider that. Let's say that is true. For me, it's still no mas. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. No mas. I still think that the culture begat worse culture, and you can't start off with something negative and think that you're going to make a positive out of it. And I think that this is all derived from mob culture. It comes from the mafia. The mafia had the same thing. The mafia has standards. Oh, we do this, we don't do that. But if you watch any mafia movie, if you've watched Casino, if you've watched Goodfellas, if you've watched The Godfather, eventually it devolved into being worse and worse and worse because it was all derived from something that was negative in the first place. And so negative can't beget more positive. It begets more negative, right? It doesn't translate into anything positive. It translates into anything that, now I'm not saying that this man in particular is glorifying it. He's just telling you the way that it is, okay? I'm giving my opinion based off of the culture. He's telling you why or what it used to be like in gang culture. He's not glorifying it. He's not justifying it. He's just telling you that this is the way that it used to be. But for me, it's all bad. It's all bad, because if you're doing something wrong, you're doing something illegal, it's just bad. It's nothing good that can come from it. But that's just my opinion. But let him continue to cook.
You get these new gangs, these new terrorists. I call them terrorists because the very fact that you can allow people to cross our borders and potentially harm American citizens that go unchecked with no regulation and then placed in communities that's already disinvested and violated by the policies of this current administration in Chicago and big cities and throughout this country is a violation of democracy and really treason. And with that being said, now these young men don't live by those same codes. And these guys come in, they blend in with the Puerto Ricans, the Mexicans, and other Latin Americans, and they're integrating into their gang culture. And what they doing is starting to set up in our various neighborhoods, taking over abandoned buildings, taking boards down, making those buildings their own, and then setting up outside of the shelters that they're in to pretty much as a way of tagging those blocks and communities to say, hey, this is our turf. And before long, if we don't get in front of this, there will be a powder keg of bloodshed. Because there's already a disconnect in terms of culture and language.
So Tyrone, real quick, we have about 30 seconds. What are you and your organization? What are the community? What can they do to fight back against this?
Well, hold on. Let's not skip past that. He's 100% right. I can't sit here and say that he didn't say anything that was 100% right. He said, listen, you letting this stuff come into this country is treason. Eventually, what's going to happen is it's going to translate into something way worse than you ever would have thought it was going to be. Because when you allowed for it to happen, all you did was validate this existence, and now they're setting up shop, and you're never going to be able to get rid of it. So then what it's going to translate into is us fighting more wars, a war on American soil, a war against this gang, a war against that gang. They've recruited. They've gotten bigger. Now they're infested in the community. And instead of us saying, hey, we need to root it out completely, we need to negotiate with them, and we need to have better police relationships, and we need to have a conversation and fix it and do this and do that and blah, 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 blah. And that's what it then turns into. It turns into the worst thing ever. And then we don't want to uproot it because we say, well, they had kids. And what about the children? No. It should have never been here in the first place, and that's why you got to root it out. You got to root it out. It should have never even crossed in here in the first place. So now what happens is it's similar to people that came over here illegally and then they had children. And they called them, I forgot what they call them. But people that came over here illegally, for example, and then they've been here for years. And then people say, well, but I've been here for 20 years illegally. And I hate to put it like that. I hate to summarize it by saying and reducing it down to, well, you should have never been over here in the first place. Let me ask you a question. Let's say that I've read stories of people that committed some of the most heinous crimes ever. Rapists, murderers, hitmen. And then they move over to a different state somehow from the 70s, and they change their name, and they 80 and they 90 years old now. And somehow, some way, some little loose end and something that he said, or somebody was looking him out to find out if he was his father or not, or they took on the identity of a dead person, and they say, oh man, yeah, anchor babies. And they go over there and they take on the identity of a dead person. And then somehow the FBI discover them 40 and 50 years later. But that person has got a different life. He's got a new family. He's got children. He's got all of this. Guess what they do? Arrest him, take him back, and they charge him for the thing that he did 40 to 50 years ago. They don't care if he's got a new life. They don't care that he's found a wife. They don't care that he's working under a different person's name. They don't care if he's gotten children now. You know why? Because he still has to be held accountable for the thing that he did 50 years ago in somebody's life that he took. And so then you start to get people that feel sorry. Oh, but he's actually an upstanding citizen now. Now you caught between the tail of two places because you allowed this thing to happen and it proliferated in your culture and in your society. And now it's pulling on your heartstrings because you don't know what to do when you've known this person and you start to become acquainted with them and you're close to them. So you'll have people that over here illegally and they crossed over to the border because they wanted a new life. That's what they're going to tell you. But they came over here illegally. They didn't do it legally. They came over, they had children or whatever. And so now when they get caught up by ICE, oh, but no, I got children here. You was never supposed to be here in the first place. And that's the thing that we wrangle with.
Well, we've been on the ground since the beginning. We've been fighting forcefully, letting the Democratic Party and the policy makers in this Chicago know that it is unacceptable for them to continue to violate our communities. And as black men, returning citizens who've actually had a hand in the terroristic effect of violence in these communities, we're on the front line now saying, hey, we have to protect our communities and our neighborhoods and our blocks.
I redid that video. I want to go back to that original video that I was talking about. Let's see if I can get it popping.
There is widespread evidence the vast majority.
See that? We work in real time over here. We work in real time.
Of migrants coming to the United States do so for the same reason as this Ecuadorian man we met in New York City. A dangerous situation at home and the hope of work and security here. And while the numbers of those arriving at our southern border has dropped dramatically, there are growing concerns about those coming as part of the Biden administration's parole program, bringing those from 4 countries here by plane.
What? Maybe I missed something. Did I mishear that? Because it looked like they was getting on a private plane to me.
Dropped dramatically. There are growing concerns about those coming as part of the Biden administration's parole program, bringing those from 4 countries here by plane. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol data show more than 530,000 migrants have taken part.
I don't understand. What is a CHNB parole program? Okay, give me a second. Let me do a little bit of research. This is all new to me. I'm sorry. Give me a second. I'm just trying to figure it out. Biden administration's parole program for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. What? Did y'all know about this? Am I the only person that was unfamiliar with what was going on? Okay, hold on. Let me play this, and then we're going to go from there.
That includes more than 117,000 from Venezuela, a country with which the United States has no diplomatic relationship, which means background information about them or their prior criminal history is hard to come by.
It makes it so easy for this TDA Venezuela gang that's so treacherous to come to the United States and set up bases. There are bases in New York and other states across the country, and now including even in the state of Texas.
The New York Times reporting members of Tren de Aragua are living and recruiting new members inside the city's migrant shelters. In Chicago, local media is reporting on gang turf wars, a phenomenon predicted by a former border chief in Texas.
But what happens when you start going head to head to gangs like MS-13 that are just as powerful? Then what you have a big mess. You have gangs fighting gangs.
When the black gangs get fed up with the illegalities and the criminal activity of these migrants or non-citizens, the city of Chicago is going to go up in smoke.
The city of Chicago has spent more than $400 million on migrants over the last few years.
Nope, 700. I've done my research. It's 700 million plus.
Local residents there and elsewhere are starting to become more vocal at city council meetings, arguing that money would be better spent on low-income residents who are citizens of the United States.
So let me look this up. Let me show y'all what I pulled up. So this is some insight. So on January 5th, 2023, so while Kamala Harris was sitting there pretending like Trump killed some kind of border security bill to prevent people from coming over here illegally, and this is why you got to do your research, the Biden administration, which includes Kamala Harris, listen, she's lying to you. And this is why you need people that actually can do some research. Because see, I hear something and I got to go and look it up. It's the same thing when I do Bible study. When I do Bible study, I got to go and I see a word and it don't make sense and I'm trying to understand how it's relevant to what we talking about or what I've been reading. I got to pull out the concordance. I got to start doing some research. I got to look at the verses before it and after it and reference the stories before it so I can understand why that's relevant in this particular thing. It could take one word and I'm going down a rabbit hole. Biden administration announced its intent to provide safe and orderly pathways to the United States. So coming over here legally is not a safe and orderly pathway. Okay. For up to 30,000 nationals, which we already know that is in the millions now, 30,000 nationals of Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. The new program, which they haven't stopped, and they've been flying people over here, formerly known as Process for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. That's what the CHNV stands for. I didn't know that. Allows certain people from these 4 countries who have a sponsor in the U.S., bull, and who pass a background check, nonsense, to come to the U.S. for a period of 2 years, live and work lawfully using a legal mechanism known as humanitarian parole. So they did the same thing that rich people do with finances. They found a loophole. So now they still doing the same thing, but instead of just letting them walk over through the borders, what they're doing is they're flying them over here and they using this loophole and they saying that they've closed off the borders and migration into the country, which now we don't even know how many really is over here. So are they going to go back after 2 years? And why is it more than 500,000 estimated and not just in the 30,000? The creation of this new parole program, however, was coupled, that's a key word, remember this, was coupled with restricted access to asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border for migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Starting in January 2023, the government of Mexico agreed to allow the U.S. to expel up to 30,000 migrants from countries to Mexico each month, preventing them from requesting asylum under the U.S. immigration law. With the expiration of Title 42 order in May 2023, the U.S. announced it would formally deport some migrants from these countries to Mexico instead of their home countries. What is humanitarian parole? The Immigration and Nationality Act, did y'all know about that? I didn't know about the INA, grants DHS the discretion to temporarily, Department of Homeland Security is what DHS stands for, to temporarily allow certain non-U.S. citizens to enter or remain in the United States if they apply for admission, but lack any legal basis for admission. Individuals who enter the United States under these conditions are granted parole. Humanitarian roles does not provide any permanent pathway to remain in the United States and can be revoked or not renewed should the Department of Homeland Security decide that it no longer warranted or if the beneficiary violates the conditions of the parole. A person of the United States on parole may apply for work authorization during their period or their authorized stay. The Department of Homeland Security may grant parole to someone if there are urgent, humanitarian, or significant public benefit reasons for doing so. The INA does not define what constitutes an urgent humanitarian or significant public benefit reason, but U.S. CIS states that an urgent humanitarian reason might include protection against targeted or individualized harm. So what this is basically telling you is that they have this system set up for humanitarian parole, but there are no requirements or no baseline that they can qualify whether you should or you shouldn't be in the United States of America is all left up to the discretion of the Department of Homeland Security, which we know is corrupt. Mayorkas, anybody? So it's left up to their own reasoning. It's up to them. The INA, which is the Immigration and Nationality Act, does not define what constitutes an urgent humanitarian or significant public benefit reason. In creating the CHNB, humanitarian parole program, so when they start getting heat for too many migrants coming over into the millions, the Biden administration, and this is according to the American Immigration Council.org, the Biden administration invoked both grounds for parole, arguing that the programs provide a significant public benefit for the United States by reducing the unauthorized entries along our southwest border while addressing the humanitarian reasons causing people to flee those four countries. So what this is saying, in short, for us C students over here, is that they created this program in the beginning of 2023 and no visibility, no publicity was given to it whatsoever. I just found this on a whim. All right. What this is basically telling you is that the Biden administration, to solve for all of the visibility that came from people coming in here illegally on our southern border, created the CHNV humanitarian parole program, which none of the voters know anything about. We don't get these discussed at any of the debates. None of the people that are interviewing these people ask these questions. Certainly ain't going to get this question asked from anybody in the audience or Oprah Winfrey. They created this program to create relief at the border so that they don't get visibility of people coming in here illegally, but they still got people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela coming over here. So now it all makes sense. When we ask questions and I say, man, how did they get over here? How did they end up in Springfield, Ohio? Why would they pick Springfield, Ohio? Why would they pick Aurora? Why would they pick some small dying mining town in Pennsylvania to ship a bunch of Haitians over to, a bunch of Venezuelans over there? How are they just ended up in different parts of the country? Because they want to 100% blame it on Governor Wheelchair down there in Texas. Governor Wheelchair is just sharing the love because they couldn't effectively stop him when they sued him from preventing people from coming over the Texas border. So now what they're doing is they flying them into these different places, and they're doing it under the cloak of the humanitarian parole program, so they can't then be prosecuted or be held accountable for it, but it was never promoted to the general public, and so y'all don't know what's really going on. And so when you see these people arrive in Springfield, Ohio, and you start to see them arrive in Aurora, and then you got Kamala Harris sitting there saying, well, it's all Donald Trump's fault because he didn't sign the bill at the end of 2023 when this was created in the beginning of 2023. January 5th, 2023, the Biden administration announced its intent to provide safe and orderly pathways to the United States of America. Then they talked about a bipartisan agreement at the end of 2023 when we already had over 15 million illegal migrants cross over into the border. And so now they want to set this on the lap of Donald Trump, but this is how you know Democrats are dirty. They dirty. When these people just arrive and she sit there and say, I can't believe that they're demonizing these people in Springfield, Ohio. They're not eating cats and geese. It's because they sent them there. And the reason that she won't talk about it and why none of these reporters have the competence, because maybe they just don't know. They wake up, drink their Cheerios, eat their Cheerios, drink the milk that's left over, go into work, and then go based off of the script that somebody asked. But nobody is willing to actually do the research to ask the pertinent questions, yet you see black people continue to vote based off of identity politics out of ignorance because they don't even know what they're getting. They don't even know that they're being flew under this act right here that is basically left up to the federal government to determine whether or not your crisis or your humanitarian crisis, they determine what a crisis is for you. No vetting, no background checks, just jump on a plane, come over here. You go to Springfield. You go to Aurora. You go to Pennsylvania. You go to Detroit. You go to Chicago. You go to New York. And this is what we're going to do. See how we had to go down a rabbit hole? This is why this is the greatest morning show. Tell your grandmother to tune in so she can get this work. Tell your simp daddy to tune in so they can get this work. Show this. I'm going to clip this up for y'all. I'll drop it in a couple days. And then send this to your friends and family and tell them Anton did the research so you don't have to. The election is what, 43, 42 days away, 44 days away? Maybe you can become more informed as to what's really going on in your neighborhood. Why they just so happen to show up and they can't even speak no English. They just popped up. 20,000 people just popped up over in Springfield, Ohio overnight in less than a year. They had a population of 39,000. Now they got 21,000 extra people in there, and their schools and their hospitals is overwhelmed, and we don't know nothing. It just so happened to happen. I've been asking this question for a long time. Man, how is they getting over here? What exactly pathway did they take? How did they travel all the way up through Nashville and Georgia? Go and send this to your grandmother. Tell your grandmother that she needs to subscribe to the Millionaire Morning Show, because we're no longer going to be a part of the Democratic plantation. We don't just go based off of what the news say. We take what they say into consideration. They do something. They trigger something that's in our brain. I got to start doing my research. I start going down this dark path. And that's how I left the Democratic Party. That's exactly why I left the Democratic Party, because you can't continue to tell me that it's raining outside, but you pissing on my head. You're not going to keep on telling me that I just need to align with something based off of that Democratic Party. You know, I was doing a street interview yesterday. It was happenstance. It just so happened to run it. A guy noticed me. I dropped it on the Anton Daniels channel this morning. And he said, I like Kamala Harris because she's a nice person. And I seen the comments this morning and people was like, nice where? What's nice about her? Y'all better wake up. Better wake up. Better wake the piss up. They coming for you. They coming for you. They're coming for you. They coming for your jobs, for your families, for your opportunities, for your homes. The places that you called the hood, they taking that over and they going to rebuild that up.